Wolfpack, what's going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street. RotoStreetJournal.com, we breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Here to tell you we take no days off. It's 2023, not even a handful of days in, and we're diving into the 2023 fantasy football rankings, baby. Let's go. The must-watch stories as well. We'll go position by position, talk through it all. Many of you are probably thinking this is way too early, Wolf. You're a psycho. Although many of you also probably watching this show are just like me, never getting a satisfied itch with that fantasy infliction. And that's why I'm here to keep getting that content all off season. I'll miss you guys all too much. Those of you that tune into the live streams, interacting with us daily, would miss you guys too much. But obviously, too, I think there's a lot of practicality to getting this ranking set out here early. Yes, we'll have tons of swings and changes with the coaching changes, the free agency, the NFL draft, all of those things will send these rankings up and down in all different directions. But I still love getting this base very early. It's actually my first time doing a stream this early, but I always get my rankings up quickly right when I can because it's very important to look back upon when there's no other rankings out there right now to really bias me. This is kind of like the purest fantasy soul I have out here with the season still fresh, all of those things still on the mind and nothing else to skew me. I like to get these rankings out here, have a little record, so that way when things do rise, fall, and all that action happens, I have something to fall back upon and look at. So yes, of course, it's for all you fantasy addicts out there who can't get enough, but also the little practicality, a little bit of a going back point, if you will. So folks, if you enjoy the content while we get through these, or you're just tuning in live here as we get going, that thumbs up does continue to help us grow. We had a great season of growth. It was so awesome in 2022. We're hoping to double it again in 2023 by getting out there early and often and helping you guys dominate these leagues. As mentioned, we'll go position by position, talking about what my rankings and tiers are and what we'll be watching, some of the biggest stories. We expect to change these things as we go in 2023. But thanks again so much. I see a bunch of you guys already tuning in with your thank yous. Super chat already coming in from Kevin Rice. Thank you so much, Kevin, for your support. And anybody we helped win a title, let us know. We love to hear that stuff. It does go such a long way. It's why we do it, is to help you guys win. So let us know how you did. But thank you so much for the super chat, for checking out shop.roastreetjournal.com, getting your shirts. All right, let's go, though. You want to get into these rankings. Let's start with my way too early 2023 rankings at the quarterback position. I go by tiers always, as you guys know. And as you can see here, 1, 2, 3. I don't think you can go wrong. If you want to argue, Patrick Mahomes should be number one, I'm not going to give you much grief. All of these guys are the guys I would take mid to late round 2 at this point. And I've always been a wait on QB guy, but I think the NFL is evolving and we need to evolve our fantasy strategies with it. And certainly in 2 QB leagues, these guys should be in your, maybe the 1, 2, 3 off the board. No other position should even be thought upon with these 3, with Josh Allen at number 1, Jalen Hurts at number 2, and then Pat Mahomes coming in at 3. Again, organize them however you want. These are the guys that just average routinely 25 to 30 points a game. I mean, Josh Allen himself had 10 of his 16 games finish inside the top 5 fantasy QBs as a weekly performer. These are the guys that consistently give you a head's edge. I do give Allen just the slight edge here over Hurts and Mahomes, given that, back-to-back years rather, in the top 2 fantasy quarterbacks, with 2 of them being number 1. This year, he did fall behind Patrick Mahomes as the number 1 quarterback. Jalen Hurts, in fact, was the number 1 quarterback in points per game. So again, all of these guys are perfectly okay. Whichever one you want to take, you're not going to get much argument or grief from me. I do think they belong after the elite running backs and wide receivers are gone. The top 12 receivers, the top 8 or so running backs, that's when you can really start to consider these guys in your early rounds. A strategy, a philosophy switch that I am abiding to this year. Now, the tier 2, and I honestly, now that I'm looking at this, I almost feel like Fields belongs in another tier himself, given they are bound to upgrade this team significantly in the offseason, the Bears, behind Justin Fields. Biggest upgrades I'm looking for is the offensive line. He was under duress all day, and yes, I know that generates some rushing opportunities, but getting him some more time to throw, and then also some more weaponry. Yes, they traded for Chase Claypool, going to be a big difference maker once he can finally get acclimated to this offense and they get to really figure out how to use him. But he's a good number 2. We need a true alpha for me to truly vaunt Justin Fields into that next tier. But man, we saw multiple, in fact, the most among any QBs 40-point days from Justin Fields. The ceiling is ridiculous. If he was playing this week, he'd probably be breaking. This is week 18 right now. We're going through these rankings. He's going to sit, but he was damn close to breaking Lamar Jackson's rushing record on the year, but he's going to sit this one out. So I think Justin Fields definitely has the upside to approach this top tier, maybe even emerge in like tier 2 by himself, because that rushing upside defines Konami upside, but want to see some line, want to see some weapons upgrades. Right behind him are Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. I keep flip-flopping these guys, and maybe lately I've been feeling better about Burrow, but I just think these are the guys, the middle rounds, 4, 5, and 6, where I'd consider like rounds 5 through 7, where I really take that early plunge. If I miss out on the big 3 at the top, these are the guys you can just lock in, set, and forget yet again in 2023. In tier 3, we start to move into some of the guys that definitely locked in QB1s, but maybe a little bit more question marks here. Moving at number 7, Trevor Lawrence, a big rise over this last year. I mean, he has truly taken that next step, looking like an absolute monster down the stretch run, engineering a Jaguars team that's just scorching hot, likely into the playoffs, depending on how they go against the Titans this week. So I really like this guy because he's now going to get Trevor Lawrence. I mean, you see him wheeling and dealing with Christian Kirk, with Evan Ingram, and now you're going to have Calvin Ridley in 2023 joining this team. A lot of cap space as well for them to continue to beef up the line and add maybe even more weaponry at this point. But Trevor Lawrence, he has that feel of like, and this is how good I think Calvin Ridley is. Reminds me a bit of not as mobile as Jalen Hurts, but that same type of mid-round quarterback, around 6'7", that everybody likes as a breakout, gets that elite wide receiver 1 in Calvin Ridley, assuming he plays, at his disposal, and just takes off to that next level. Him and Doug Peterson have a great rapport. I love what they're building there in Jacksonville, and I love that Trevor Lawrence has finally emerged as that guy that does now look like you couldn't have missed it, number 1, if you had that pick. Trevor Lawrence. Jets, damn. They screwed themselves over that year by winning that one game and missing out on him. Now, Lamar Jackson, he could easily rise much higher than this 8 spot, but he's one of the biggest offseason storylines as a free agent. As mentioned, though, in the preseason, I got so much slack for Lamar Jackson, most overrated quarterback in fantasy. Big take I put out there, and through a couple weeks after 30 and 40-point back-to-back games, I was getting torn through the shredder over that one. But ultimately, the case I made against him, inconsistent, low floor, has a couple booms that make it look good on the year, but ultimately has never been that guy you can truly rely on since that MVP season. And that ultimately came to fruition. Had multiple outside the top 12 games, got hurt, as I mentioned, was a big risk with Lamar Jackson. Landing spot will be a big thing. He's truly had nobody to ever throw to. So if he goes back to Baltimore, would love to see them finally upgrade some weaponry, maybe refresh the scheme. But there's definitely some question marks with Lamar Jackson. Tua, of course, the health's a big risk. Concussion, walking concussion at this point. I mean, prayers up, the guy recovers quickly from the latest one. But if he is in, we saw how dangerous Tua can be with multiple 300-yard games thrown at Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Largely finished in the top 12. He had a stretch where he went the quarterback 1, 4, and 3 with 29, 24, 23 points. Did get hurt and then slowly tapered off a bit. But we saw Mike McDaniels in him, and these weapons look insane. So love Tua coming into next year. You got Dak Prescott rounding out my top 10 here. Wasn't quite the prolific. I mean, quarterback 1 in back-to-back years in points per game with, of course, that play caller there, Ken, what's his name? It's escaping my mind here. Him and Dak had a great relationship. They did get more run balance this year, though, so it wasn't quite that, light up the world Dak Prescott that we had been used to, but he still finished right inside your top 12 fantasy quarterbacks per game, 18.5 on the season. So nice season from Dak, even in a more balanced attack. Still had plenty of top 10 games on the year. Still has good weaponry to throw to. CeeDee Lamb, maybe they do sign Odell Beckham. And then Kirk Cousins really took that next step this offseason with this Kevin O'Connell system. Much more pass happy. Seemed to be a great marriage. We obviously know Justin Jefferson. If you're tied to Justin Jefferson, that might be a walking 200 yards right there. So we saw Kirk Cousins towards the end of the year, 25, 34, 24. Did have that meltdown against Green Bay last week with only 11 points, but really seemed to find his groove throughout the year. Multiple huge yardage days with this weaponry. So now you have the same play caller. Really, really big fan here of Kirk Cousins. And that kind of wraps up my QB1s. I do have Deshaun Watson coming in at 12. He looked horrendous, but he has never finished outside the top 6 QBs throughout his time in Houston. I do think a big rebound is in order. We saw Jared Goff look great. And then you got some of the bigger questions of the offseason, which is maybe good time here to move in from our way too early QB rankings to our offseason QB storylines here in Trey Lance, Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray. Big health storylines there. Will Trey Lance regain the number 1 quarterback job in San Francisco? He seems to be the only guy that can operate this offense right here. Matthew Stafford, with Baker Mayfield looking okay, he's gonna risk the back injury that he suffered there. Kyler Murray, his late ACL tear, is that going to be something he can fully recover from ahead of the season? So those are all things we will be monitoring this offseason is the health. We also got to monitor, as mentioned, Lamar Jackson potentially on the move. Where will he land if he leaves Baltimore? As well as Tom Brady, now a free agent, Derek Carr, Jimmy G, Daniel Jones, and Geno Smith, the other free agents entering this offseason. Where will they go? And particularly Daniel Jones, these last few weeks seems to really have come into his own with the Giants. They want to keep him, according to reports. Would be a great fit to stay there, upgrade some weaponry, and see what he can do. So as you can see, all these rankings will again be at rosestreetjournal.com/bigboard. If you want to see everything there. Let's move now to my way too early 2023 running back rankings. I'll go through about 20 of them because, again, a lot of free agents. In particular, the running back class has some very intriguing storylines and free agents this offseason. So we'll hit on those at the end. But let's rip through my rankings here. Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, my top 3 in that order. McCaffrey does have some question marks. Will he coexist well if Trey Lance does return as the starter, who did not show much of a propensity to throw it to the running back position? We will see. But, man, he has over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns in less than half of a season since coming over to San Fran. What a beautiful fit with Kyle Shanahan, a brilliant player with a brilliant play caller. Don't need to overthink it. He's my number 1 running back and number 1 overall player as of right now. If I was drafting today, Christian McCaffrey. Austin Eckler not far behind him, though. Yet another brilliant season. He has 38 touchdowns across his last 2 years. The next closest guy is 22. An elite scorer at the position, was routinely a running back 1 throughout the year, finishing with a bang, 20 and 28 standard points. You mix in the half PPR, we got 30 points there as the running back 1 in your fantasy championships. Big season from Austin Eckler here, used to perfection in an explosive offense. Not much else needs to be said. Now, Henry returned from that 2021 injury quite well, just exploding. It looked a little sketchy to begin the year. 8 and 9 points, running back 33, 26, and then bam, 23, 22, 26, 15, 35, 24, 8, 24, 13, 5, 19, 24, and 18 points, routinely finishing in the top 5 running backs. Just an absolute steamrolling tank that continues to defy age. This is the type of guy, he'll be a little bit older, so big risk entering the season because we know that cliff at 30 for the running back position, but he'll be about 28, 29 throughout the season. I'm not too worried about this guy. He's built like such a tank that I don't know the age will necessarily matter and make him more injury prone. Then we move on to Jonathan Taylor, tier 2. So those first 3 are the guys that I continue to remain locked into my half PPR first round. But next year, we'll talk about when we get to receivers. I've always been a bell cow breeder. I still have 5 guys in my fringe first round here at the running back position, but I only consider that first 3, again, McCaffrey, Eckler, Henry, as you must take these guys in round 1. There's no debating it otherwise. Then we move into tier 2, and these are still my running back 1s, but more so the round 2 guys that I consider. And Jonathan Taylor, a fringe first rounder, the next guy on the list, the number 1 consensus guy entering the year, obviously one of the biggest disappointments in fantasy, but they are bound for a top 3 pick. Maybe they do get one of the big 2 rookie QBs coming in. Either way, you got to imagine they make a huge upgrade there. Certainly, it's not going to be worse play calling than Jeff Saturday coming in. So getting fully healthy, I mean, I am willing to look past the sickening year with awful quarterback play, horrendous line play. They have a ton of holes they need to fix here for Jonathan Taylor to reemerge, but I am very confident. The few times they really did establish him and get him going was that one streak. It started with the Raiders game, 22 carries, 20 and 21. He finished with 23, 15, 17, and then 12 points, was a top 12 running back for 3 of those 4 weeks. And that's really the only time he had that meaningful volume at full health and then he got hurt again, and it was just a lost year for Taylor. But with better quarterback play, ideally a fresh, young offensive mind coming in, I'm a big fan of Taylor. Then we move on to one of our biggest stories of the offseason will be Saquon Barkley at 5. Number 7, Tony Pollard, also a free agent. Man, if any of them land with the Chiefs, you could have them in the conversation for number 1 overall, not just at running back, but the entire big board if they land there. Right in sandwich in between those two very, very exciting free agents is Nick Chubb, given Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson are both free agents this offseason. I do imagine Kevin Stefanski will replace them. If both those guys end up gone, whether it's Jerome Ford, who looked very impressive this preseason, or they make a higher investment in the draft or free agency pool, I do think Nick Chubb will have a running back mate. That's just how Stefanski runs the system. But, man, there's a chance, a slight chance, one of the best pure runners we've ever seen gets this entire backfield to himself, gets a full offseason to meld with Deshaun Watson. So that's why I have Nick Chubb as high as 6, despite him sputtering at the end. Don't forget how damn good he was. He was the running back 1 in fantasy for 2/3 of the year, just filthy all year. So I can imagine a world where Nick Chubb approaches the number 1 running backs, especially if he can inherit some receiving work should Kareem Hunt leave. And then Ramondre Stevenson clocking in at 8. Now, this ranking does assume Damian Harris, an unrestricted free agent, is gone. We just saw that, look no further than last week, Harris played and actually outcarried Ramondre last week. So if Harris returns, if they make a big investment at the running back position, should Harris leave, I don't know that I can keep Ramondre as a fringe top 10 guy. But as of right now, we saw him play most of the season without Damian Harris. And Ramondre was an absolute monster for those spans. Great receiving. If you look at PFF's grades, receiving, running, efficiency metrics, any type of metric you want to toss out there, this guy was an absolute monster. 18, 11, 19, 23, 20, 18, 15, 11, 16, 11, 24 points. I mean, almost all of those games falling in your top 12 running backs from week 3 through week 12. Just an absolute monster. Only was hindered when Damian Harris was in the lineup. So I could see Ramondre Stevenson, who finishes the running back 12 in fantasy, but definitely, actually, that was in standard too. So if you mix in receptions, which he was towards the top of the league in receptions, bumps up to running back 10. But again, if he gets that whole backfield to himself all year, could be a monster. Then as you see, Joe Mixon with Samaje Perine, also a free agent coming into the year, maybe more receiving work coming for him. We just, what you're getting to Mixon. It's a locked-in top 10 guy, always solid. And then rounding out my top 10 is Kenneth Walker. What an absolute monster this guy is. So many glimpses of being the next big thing. If not him, obviously Breece Hall, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But Kenneth Walker had that stretch run where he took over as the starter against New Orleans and never looked back. Running back, he had 15 points, 18 points, 29, 12, 26, 10, 16, 10, 12, and 15 across his healthy games as the starter. So double digits in all of them. I mean, that's very impressive for a rookie on an offense that should only continue to ascend here. So big fan here of Kenneth Walker moving forward. I think he'll only get better. I think the Seahawks will only get better. Another team that could stand for a big quarterback upgrade. And then you move into tier 3, and it's hard to not have Josh Jacobs right in this locked in running back 1 tier. I love the player. Also an unrestricted free agent, though, with less of the pass catching chops that Tony Pollard and of course, Saquon Barkley bring to the table. So he's definitely a little bit more landing spot dependent than the other two. I think any team that goes out and pays a big bag to get Barkley or Pollard is clearly going to be using them with very big intentions. Whereas Josh Jacobs does not bring quite that skill set, but man, he is so damn good. What an absolute warrior of a year he has had. So I could not keep him outside of my top 12 running backs. The more I think about him, he definitely belongs in this tier, maybe even ahead of Ramondre. What a season. The fantasy MVP, I would say, of 2022, given where you drafted him and where he finished as the running back 3 this year. 18.5 points per game behind only McCaffrey and Eckler. What an absolute beastly season. Maybe he returns to the Raiders after what he did, which would be a great spot. Clearly became a workhorse, changed the philosophy there for Josh McDaniels. And you round out my top 17 or so here, the remaining fringe RB1s, elite running back 2s. These are the guys you're looking at in round 3 or so as great investments. Dalvin Cook at 12. It was a good fit, not quite the fit I expected with Kevin Stefanski. Expected a lot more screens and Todd Gurley-esque usage. Didn't quite come to fruition, but still played all the games for the first time in his career. Nice season here for Dalvin Cook. Good fit. I think he's a great spot. And then Travis Etienne, man, what a breakout. After we had James Robinson traded, he had a great rest of his year. Did suffer a little bit of an injury and didn't fully seem to regain his health for a couple weeks after that. But when we saw him looking fully healthy and explosive, 13, 12, 18, 24, 26 points, gets hurt, and then ultimately rounds out the season, though, with a few big ones, 13 and 22 points, running back 5 in your fantasy championships. So Travis Etienne, I just think this Jags team continues to ascend, tied to that Trevor Lawrence offense I was just raving about. I think Travis Etienne. The one thing missing is the pass catching work, which is what his strength was coming in. So once that ideally gets added to his plate, the ceiling is the limit. Could see a top 5 finish for Travis Etienne in 2023. You got Aaron Jones, running back 14. He'll probably finish at running back 9, 10, but it will be, as we saw this year, a little bit frustrating, a little bit maddening. You'll have a 35-point day and an 8 to 9-point day. A.J. Dillon in particular really came down on the stretch here. So a little lower on Aaron Jones than I typically am. Big question for the offseason. Running back 15 here, Breece Hall suffered an ACL tear, a little bit of meniscus damage as well. If we know he's fully cleared, fully healthy, and ready to go, he was looking like maybe a top 4 running back, top 2 running back potentially in the NFL. All the athleticism in the world that everybody raved about coming into the year was translating on the field to perfection, the pass catching chops, everything. So Breece Hall, definitely one of the biggest storylines of the offseason. What type of shape's he going to be in? How's he going to look? But man, I'll be going back to that well, no doubt about it. It was a heartbreak, maybe the most heartbreaking injury of 2022. But as long as he's good to go entering the 2023 season, I mean, ACLs these days, it's like nothing. So yes, added risk with the injury, potentially re-aggravating it. But I love the player. The line is beastly. I want to see what they do at quarterback. It sounds like they're committed to Zach Wilson, which just is absolutely moronic. I think that's coach speak. See if they can get some type of deal for him. But Breece Hall, right now, top 15 without knowing his health, but could easily find himself in my top 7 running backs by the time this rolls around. James Conner just continues, after a disappointing start to the year, ultimately finishes in the top 15 with running back points per game. Missed a few games there, but averaged 13.6 points per game. Really came out down the stretch here with Kyler Murray hurt. And that's where, maybe it's a good thing for him if Kyler Murray is ultimately going to miss some time in 2023, because he just feasts James Conner, whether it's Colt McCoy, David Blau, 20, 22, 20, 17, 22 again. The guy went berserk ever since Kyler Murray has been removed from the lineup. 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 touchdown. He has scored in 7 straight weeks, 7 touchdowns across those 6 weeks to close out 2022 here for James Conner. Back to that dynamo that he was the year before. So right back in my top 20 running backs, maybe a little too low on Conner. These guys kind of round out. And then Najee Harris, a first rounder nearly everywhere last year, a guy I faded hard. I'll go back to the well, though. I do think that foot injury really took a big toll on him. And even still, well over 80% of his games finished into the double-digit fantasy points. The big thing was the receiving work just was lacking all year compared to what we saw the year prior. And hopefully they get a coordinator that capitalizes that. Najee is a great pass-catching back. I know he's not the most explosive, elusive, athletic guy, but he is just so solid in every facet of the game. Churns, gets it done, good touchdown scorer, good nose for the end zone. I think he could be in it for a big rebound, especially should they get rid of Matt Canada, that terrible offensive coordinator there. And I'll round out, 25 running backs is kind of where I'll cut this before chatting through a few of the must-watches. But Javonte Williams, right at 18, similar to Breece Hall, but an even worse injury with a torn ACL, torn LCL, and then some other damage going on in his knee. What an absolute horse, though. He's already been talking about how he's hitting his rehab as hard as you would ever expect. Looking great. He's off crutches for a while now. So I expect Javonte Williams to hopefully rebound, but can't rank him too high with the injury questions, with the offense questions. But still, this just goes to show how much I love the player. Melvin Gordon, obviously gone at this point. So if they're going to make Latavius Murray a workhorse down the stretch, maybe Williams can just reemerge as a monster. DeAndre Swift, I know many of you puke seeing him in my top 20, but Jamal Williams is a free agent. Now, I do think he's such a Dan Campbell's guy that I expect Williams will be back with the Lions, But what if he's not? That's where DeAndre Swift would creep into your top 10 potentially. So that's why I have him here at 19. So damn explosive, so maddening, his inconsistent usage, especially as a pass catcher where he is just such a beast. Why is Justin Jackson taking some of those snaps? I do not know. But 26 points in your fantasy championships goes to remind you how damn good this guy can be, even on only 15 touches. So I really like DeAndre Swift to kind of put it together in 2023 and be a big rebound, bounce back candidate. Alvin Kamara, I don't know what to do with. Rounds up my top 20. I'm hoping they have a new play caller and quarterback, just anything. That he ran less than 50% of the routes in multiple weeks this year. And he is a elite pass catcher, maybe the best pass catching back we've seen across the last 5 years. And he's getting out-targeted by like Dwayne Washington and crap. David Johnson, the corpse of David Johnson. Plus, he's got a suspension looming. So 20 felt about right, but honestly, maybe even a little too generous here with Kamara. A lot of risk coming in the offseason off of a humongous bust of a year. But round 4 or 5, I mean, there's every shot, similar to DeAndre Swift, that he could rebound in a major way. Cam Akers had a huge end to his 2022 season. And man, I do think this officially shows him fully over that Achilles injury, which usually takes 2-3 years. Usually really takes a lifetime to recover from. Very rarely have we ever seen running backs. Only Donta Foreman in recent history has recovered from that torn Achilles. But Cam Akers down the stretch here, 19, 9, 12, 34, and 14 fantasy points to close out 2022. The team really committing to him to see what they had in him, and he rewarded him. So he's got one more year on his rookie deal. Maybe this is like a final tryout for him. Could he be our back of the future situation? Big fan of Cam Akers, though, entering next year in an offense that, yes, obviously a hugely disappointing year. Need to see some significant line upgrades across the board. But I do still think this Rams team has immense upside. They're just a year removed from winning a Super Bowl as a top 5 offense in the league. McVay, always in an offense I want to tie myself to. Dobbins, obviously getting into full health will be huge for him. He's looked really good to close the rest. And I still think he's missing a gear. Like if he finds that old gear he used to have, given the vision, we're seeing all the traits but that last gear. He could be huge down the stretch. Zeke maybe has Pollard gone next year. Everybody hates on Zeke. He just continues to churn out top 10 running back seasons. Beast. Dameon Pierce, what a year he had as well. I do hate the Texans, but man, he is a talent. And Kareem Hunt, a free agent. And that kind of transitions us nicely into the must-watch offseason. I mean, Kareem Hunt could be a top 12 running back, depending where he lands. We also have free agents in David Montgomery, Miles Sanders, James Cook, a huge must-watch, given Devin Singletary is a free agent. He might become the featured back. There's a chance I'm ranking James Cook in my top 12 running backs if Devin Singletary is gone. We know Zach Moss is gone. If they make no big moves and they don't re-sign Singletary, I think James Cook would be a fringe top 12 running back next year. So definitely a huge must-watch entering the offseason. And then similarly, as like the quarterback position, we talked about free agents. We've already kind of hit upon the big ones. Barkley, Jacobs, Tony Pollard, top 12 running backs, probably regardless of where they land. But then you also have Miles Sanders, Kareem Hunt, David Montgomery, potential top 20 running backs on their landing spot. And even after them, Damian Harris, Jeff Wilson, Jamal Williams, Donta Foreman, Penny, Madison, Singletary, Pirine, like McKinnon. These guys, when they get work that have just consistently performed, all free agents. So a lot of intriguing moving parts at the running back position, and obviously huge implications for guys like Chubb, Stevenson, Swift, Zeke, James Cook, as we've talked about, given this free agent pool. So that's kind of the must watch. We mentioned Breece Hall, Javonte Williams with the health, suspension for Alvin Kamara, and the last must watch of the running back I want to toss out there, Bijan Robinson, a rookie running back. I'm not going to dive into too many rookies in this show, but this is the next big thing at the position, folks. Bijan Robinson. Rumors that the Eagles are potentially interested. I mean, wherever he lands, he's probably going to be a top 12 running back. But if he lands in a spot like the Eagles, the Chiefs, like these crazy offenses, the sky would be the absolute limit. So that's the last must watch. Find where this running back goes. All righty, Wolfpack. Thanks again so much. I'm going to hit the wide receiver position next. Just taking a quick sip of water as I do that thumbs up button. If you're enjoying the content, would be so greatly appreciated. Whether you're with us live here, whether you're catching the replay, if you're here live, get your questions on in. I'm going to be happy to answer anything you guys got. But let's move now to the wide receiver positions 2023 rankings and tiers way too early, but maybe not early enough for you guys. Let's pull up my wide receiver rankings and dive into my tiers and my overall philosophy at the position, which is greatly changing. As you all know, I've always been a bell cow breeder, running back, figure out the rest. I'm switching it up this year. Zero RB. Yes, zig where others are zagging. Everybody's going to be on the zero running back train after the year we saw. And we've seen this happen before. Big receiver years followed up by big workhorse back years. I really don't care. You look at this top 6 here I got in tier 1, all first-round locks for me. And every single one of them, you're getting elite production. That's what's so nice about the first-round receivers is it's set and forget. Like your running backs, the injuries and the underwhelming nature of Dalvin Cook, and just there's certainly more risk and more fluctuation in the running back position. Whereas receivers, you draft Justin Jefferson at 1, Tyreek Hill 2, Stephon Diggs 3, Devontae Adams 4, Jamar Chase 5, Cooper Kupp at 6. You're getting elite production from all of those guys. And that's why they deserve to 100% be first-round locks. Only maybe you consider McCaffrey, Eckler, and Henry over any of them. Now, you could rank these guys really in whatever order you'd like. I do think Jefferson has affirmed himself. I'm the guy. I'm the captain. I'm number 1 here. Approaching 2,000 yards this year. A monster season for him. Him and Kirk Cousins only going to get better, in my opinion. So I love Justin Jefferson at the top for me. But Tyreek Hill, what an absolute, he needs Pat Mahomes, not quite after this season. The big thing was the volume. And he kept talking about how I'm leaving the Chiefs because they don't throw it to me enough. And then you saw it come to fruition, 12, 13, 14, 15, 13, 14, 10, 13. I mean, over half of his game, he had 13 or more targets. That's beastly for Tyreek Hill. And man, did he impress in this offense, running after the catch. Not Deebo Samuel in terms of backfield and that type of usage, but greatly schemed up by Mike McDaniels. Diggs, you don't need me to rave about him. You know how damn good he is. The best quarterback in fantasy football, his number 1 weapon. He really reemerged too. Like I know that last year, he a little underwhelming for Stephon Diggs standards. He really bounced back. Huge year for Stephon Diggs this past year. Now, I know that the end of the year was a little cold. 5-8, 4-4. Some shitty weather in there. It's just some mixes. So that's like why he's not my number 1 guy, despite being in such an explosive offense. I still think Stephon Diggs, though, pretty impossible to rank as anything other than a top 5 asset. You could argue maybe you bump Adams over him depending on what happens at quarterback. I mean, what a year he had, even with Carr. Stidham last week, 2 touchdowns. I mean, beastly game. But Jamar Chase, he could always, you bump him above Diggs if you want. Really, you can reorganize these top 5. They're just the first-round locks. Nobody has the ceiling of these guys to just go for 40 to 50 any given week. I think Cooper Kupp rounds him out. He's the biggest question mark. That's the only reason he's at 6. Because, before getting hurt, he's the wide receiver 2 in fantasy points per game at the position. Actually finishes a top 20 PPR wide receiver, playing only 9 of the games on the season. So Justin Jefferson had 18.7 half PPR points per game, but Cooper Kupp 18.2 right behind him. Then Tyreek Hill, Adams, and Diggs round out your top 5 in points per game. Diggs did drop off a bit. Adams and Hill at 17 and then Diggs 15. But man, just so freaking good. And then you move to tier 2. These are my round 2 guys. And that's where I start to consider running backs more. But I also have CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown at 7, 8, and then Amon-Ra, St. Brown at 9. Locked into my running back. My round 2 positions there. Locked in at wide receiver 1s, but elite. If you go receiver, Chase and Lamb, something of that nature, you could have a ridiculous start. Look at some of the biggest running backs from the season. We're talking about like Ramondre Stevenson, Tony Pollard. Like you could have had them. Josh Jacobs. You had those 3 running backs and 3 elite receivers, and that will probably those guys will emerge again in 2023. Those mid-round running backs that just go nuts. So I do love this receiver approach. I'm definitely going to be experimenting more with it. Those are the guys I consider the round 2, fringe round 1, definitely round 2 locks in Lamb, Brown, and St. Brown. Lamb in particular, questions, will he ever be the alpha? Can he get it done with Dak entering the year? Over half of his games with 10 or more targets, truly showed he is an alpha here. Love CeeDee Lamb. I've always loved the player. It was just great confirmation. A.J. Brown obviously was a pristine fit with the explosive Eagles offense and Jalen Hurts. the kid's birthday party narrative came to fruition. And then Sippy Cup, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like absolute definition of a target hog. Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, could not be better as a schemer with slot receivers. So, to me, especially in PPR league, St. Brown is an absolute monster. The ceiling doesn't seem quite as high as some of these other guys. He's not quite the touchdown score as that next tier or the two guys above him. But St. Brown, just such a reliable source of 12, 10, 12, 12, 10, 12, 11, 10, 9, 12, 11, 13. Almost all of his games, only 2 games on the season that he played, did he see less than 8 targets. That's insane. Insane volume, and schemes open so well by Ben Johnson. So big fan. Then we move to tier 3, and these are like your round 3 wide receivers, your elite wide receiver 2s. If you somehow did go running back, or maybe you got Kelsey running back to begin the draft, they could still get you by as your wide receiver 1. But if they're your wide receiver 2, you're feeling damn good. Jalen Waddle at 10, DK Metcalf at 11, Hopkins at 12, and then T. Higgins at 13. And Higgins on any other team would probably be right with the A.J. Browns, the CeeDee Lambs, maybe even approach that top tier. That's how good he is. But he'll always be the 1B to Jamar Chase, in my opinion. I think Chase is just that much more elite here. So that tier, though, is high-end, elite wide receiver 2s, low-end wide receiver 1s. Metcalf got it done all year with Geno Smith. You got to think he's due for a quarterback upgrade. Or Geno, he could be back. He played really, really well. Waddle's obviously a perfect fit for McDaniels, ripping it up and down the field after the catch. So huge fan of him. And then you move into your Chargers guys. Keenan Allen only played 9 games, but man, were they emphatic once he got in there. Ultimately, huge target hog, similar to St. Brown, 14-14, 9-14, then 6th last week against the Rams. But he really closed out the season in style, was top 13 across the game. Definitely getting up there in age. So maybe you got to consider that well into his 30s entering the year. I do have to maybe consider that a little bit more, especially when you got guys like Devonta Smith, the Slim Reaper, young, emerging talents like him. Part of me, as I watch this and think about it, maybe Smith belongs even right alongside T. Higgins, the way he performed this season, ultimately finishing as the wide receiver 10, Devonta Smith, and overall fantasy points right around the wide receiver 15 in points per game. So something to consider there for your fantasy rankings entering next season. But I do love Chargers. I like anything tied to Justin Herbert, as I think that offense, rumblings that Sean Payton might be interested in going there. I don't know that they get rid of Staley after a playoff-bound season, but that would be something special for sure. Godwin, it clearly has emerged as the go-to guy for Tom Brady or whoever. Really such a stud. Like, if we knew what the state of the quarterback was, I think Godwin would be right into that tier 3 with DK, Hopkins, Higgins. I rank him as a talent right along those guys. But big quarterback questions here. What's going to happen? Who's going to be the play caller? But a year removed now from the surgery, so fully healthy. He's talked about at length this year how he really hasn't gotten his legs under him quite yet. I could see him being an absolute monster with the right QB, the right play caller, but those are 2 huge question marks for Godwin. And then we start talking about the young guys. Devonta Smith at 17, like I talked about, I might bump him all the way up to 14, 13 type range here. But after him, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, such an impressive rookie class this last year. You got to think both those guys do for huge quarterback upgrades this offseason. Love them. Then you got a couple of the past top 5 guys in Deebo Samuel, Calvin Ridley, some question marks, of course, entering 2022 or 2023 rather. But man, they could be huge assets, huge talents. It depends who's throwing to Deebo. But man, Calvin Ridley has been never finished outside the top 8 receivers across the last 2 years. He's elite. So he could be a monster. Cooper, top 10 receiver in fantasy points this year. It was boom or bust. It is how it goes with Amari Cooper. But you got to think him and Deshaun Watson can really forge that rapport this offseason and get even better. Tyler Lockett, a 6-game touchdown streak entering last week. What a beast he is. Just continues to get it done. And then we rounded out with some more of those guys. Christian Watson, again, another part of that elite rookie class we had this year. When he took over as a starter, there was a 5-week span. He was the number 1 receiver in fantasy football. He averaged over 25 points per game for a 5-game stretch. Did fizzle out a little bit when Dobbs came back, and Rodgers still continues to play games with him. but man, he's a beast. And then Terry McLaurin rounds out our top 25. You got other guys, I won't go through the entire rest of these guys, but Mike Evans, DJ Moore, big quarterback questions, but obviously insane talent, similar to Pittman, great talent. Who's his QB going to be? Will Marquise Brown be able to get it done with somebody not named Kyler Murray? Drake London, he's as talented as any of these rookies we talked about, but less faith in Arthur Smith as a play caller. Christian Kirk, great season, but could he be a beast even with Calvin Ridley? Brandon Ayuk, what a step this guy took, but is Trey Lance going to really get it done for multiple receivers if he's the guy? And Judy definitely emerged as a target hog down the stretch. You got to mention George Pickens and Dotson too. Again, definitely top 20 upside. Dotson was a top 20 wide receiver in 6 of his 8 games this year. I love him. Obviously, you need, Pickens, a complete and utter beast. So those are some of the must-watch stories. Like, how does the offseason develop for this impressive, this insane rookie class? Then you got another great 2023 rookie class coming in right behind him. So be interesting to see where those guys land. In terms of, especially compared to the running back position, free agent-wise, to move to must-watches, Juju is number 1, DJ Chark, Jacoby Myers, McCole Hardman, Slayton, Paris Campbell, Lazard, Sterling Shepard. You can probably get what I'm getting at. It's not nearly as exciting as the running back position is at the wide receivers. Last year was an insane wide receiver crop. This year makes you want to puke. So it makes you wonder, will there be any more monster trades? I mean, we had, again, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, and Devontae Adams all moved. Will we get some more crazy offseason fireworks this year? We can only hope, given that free agent pool looks disgusting. And then, of course, we mentioned the health of Cooper Kupp, but you also got guys like Rashad Bateman, Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore coming off some season-ending injuries. How will they be? How will they be recovering this offseason? Wolfpack, we'll now wrap it up here with my way too early. We'll wrap up here with my way too early 2022 tight end rankings. We'll breeze through these a bit quicker than the other positions, given tight end position is pretty much Travis Kelce, maybe Mark Andrews, and that's about it. But let's talk about how I have these guys ranked. Travis Kelce still a tier on his own. Talks will falter as a 35-year-old. Is he ever going to crumble? I don't know. He's so good at avoiding contact. I think he's a little soft in that sense, but it prolongs his career. It preserves him. He is so damn good at finding the soft spots in the zone. Such a good chemistry with Pat Mahomes. I need to see him fall off before I rank him that hypothetically will. He's a guy who'll continue to go back to the well. I don't care if I'm a year too late on it. Travis Kelce is just the ultimate edge in fantasy football, worth a top 5 pick in 2023. I already set an alarm on my phone. Remind me in June to rank Travis Kelce in the top 3 because he is that big of an edge. One of the highest advance rates in best ball, Travis Kelce. Now, Mark Andrews, obviously a disappointing year. I'm chalking a lot of it up to health, though, because he was having yet again another monster season to kick off 2022, 21, 25, 3-point double, then 19 and 20, gets hurt, and ultimately single digits all the way until this last week, week 17. And that's when I thought he'd finally look the healthiest I've seen him in a long time. 9 catches, 100 yards, back to the Mark Andrews we knew and love. So I think he does still deserve that number 2 overall tier by himself spot, because when he was healthy, he was that. He was still that humongous elite edge that only Travis Kelce could outdo. But a little questionable now moving forward, after being that complete utter lock, you couldn't even question. You got to have a little bit of eyebrow raise there. Then you move to tier 3. These are the guys that are locked in tight end ones, not quite the level of Kelce, but the guys that you wouldn't bench any given, even if there's a fire on Sunday type of guys. Now, Dallas Goedert, my number 3. What a great year he was having before his injury. Steady, reliable at the tight end position. He had 8, 11, 10, 10, 14, 29. Pretty capped ceiling at that one, again, 20-point day where he's the number 1 tight end, but did not really dip, only 2 dips into the top 5 tight end pools, but also only twice fell outside of the top 11. So he was just a really, really reliable guy, even if the ceiling was pretty capped. In this offense, he's always going to have himself a nice ceiling. Now, the tight end 2 on the year was TJ Hawkinson. He comes in at my tight end 5 behind George Kittle, who absolutely erupted, was the tight end 1 over the final 4 weeks of the season. Really had a good rapport with Brock Purdy. Did not have a good rapport at all with Trey Lance throughout his career so far. but he went for 23, 27, and then 10 points to close out 3 straight top 12 performances, 1 and 2 for 2 of those weeks. Man, George Kittle was an absolute beast here down your stretch runs. So if he can continue to milk that, like that's the thing with him though, is it is up and down. It is a little inconsistent here for him, but I just love the player. As a talent, the best tight end in the league. Hopefully he can continue to find a good rapport. Him and Hawkinson's a tricky one to rank though. Only Travis Kelce outscored Hawkinson. Only Travis Kelce had more expected fantasy points than TJ Hawkinson. He was right at home in Minnesota right from the get. He was the number 2 wide receiver option there. Took over for Adam Thielen. Never, had that one like 30-point day with the team, but was rock steady the rest of the way there. So I do love Hawkinson. And then, of course, the guy that will make a lot of you puke, Kyle Pitts. But, I mean, nobody had more air yards, and he missed, last half of the season. And he still led the position in air yards. Over half of his targets were deemed uncatchable. Just a slight quarterback upgrade, and we could be talking about an absolute monster still. I still believe in the player, still believe in the talent. Roll your eyes all you want. And then I round out my top 10 tight ends with Freiermuth. What a steady source of volume. What a beast, just like rock solid, reliable, great set of hands, good after the catch. I really made that his focus this year, and it came out big time. And then you got Darren Waller. You always got to have him as a top 10 guy. I know it was inconsistent, but he is still 6'5", big, beastly athlete. You got to imagine another quarterback upgrade potentially coming there. So I still like Waller, still believe in him. David Njoku, big breakout this past year. Just had a good rapport down the stretch there. I mean, yeah, I'm thinking about Darren Waller too. 12, 8, and 15 once he finally got back healthy. 10 and 14 to kick off the year before getting hurt. Similar to Mark Andrews. You got to kind of give it that type of respect, that type of treatment. I didn't move my banner. My fault there. Wolfpack. And then Dalton Schultz and David Njoku round out my top 10 here. But yeah, as mentioned, David Njoku, top 6 tight end before he himself got hurt, ultimately finished the year right around the top 10 in fantasy points per game, right alongside, Freiermuth, Evan Ingram, some of these guys that had some huge games. And Dalton Schultz, a free agent. Otherwise, if he was back with the Cowboys, would probably be inside that top, right here, 5-6 range, not above Hawkinson, but maybe above Pitts. So we'll see where he ends up going. After that, it becomes that kind of throw a dart. So we're not going to dive into these guys, but Dawson Knox, tight end 11. If you're throwing the darts, you want the good offenses. Kmet had some big games at number 12 there. Higbee, maybe he reemerges. I don't know. I don't buy that. Taysom Hill, maybe he needs to bump up. He was actually a tight end 2 in standard leagues if you don't get points for receptions. Evan Ingram, only low because he's a free agent. Now, if he re-signs with the Jags, and why shouldn't they re-sign him? I could see him finish, ranking right in this top, right around Freiermuth, maybe even higher. He had his best year as a professional, looked so damn athletic throughout the stretch run of this year. I mean, you look at, he was the number 2 tight end in fantasy over his last 5 games, 12, 34, 10, 15, and then they had a dud to close it out with 3 points against Houston. But what a season he ended up having, especially as he finally found some consistent footing there. And then it becomes a crapshoot. Everett, good offense touchdown. Gesicki, a free agent. So that's maybe a kind of the time to transition to the must-watch at the tight end position. And so the free agents, Dalton Schultz, Mike Gesicki, Evan Ingram, all potential top 7 tight ends, depending where they land. And then you got good athletes like Irv Smith, Hayden Hurst, Foster Moreau, Tunyon, Jawan Johnson, free agents. Far less appealing, though, than that big 3 again of Schultz, Gesicki, and Evan Ingram. Those are the stories I'm watching. Also, how's Taysom Hill? Where's he going? Is he going to be continuing to be that? And Chig Okonkwo, that next precipice, him and Greg Dulcich, how are they developing this offseason? 2 very impressive rookies, could be big household names down the stretch in 2023. Alrighty, Wolfpack, 50 minutes here of my entire 2023 rankings. Again, nobody else out there yet to bias my rankings. So I like to get them out there early. Gives me also, as I send people up and down the rankings, you can see why it's happening. So not just a complete and utter disgusting addict here in fantasy. There is an actual point to this exercise. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, that thumbs up button means the world. Let's hit a quick mailbag here. We got, of course, my man Campanelli. And a very, very important comment too. Thoughts and prayers, especially for DeMar Hamlin. Getting good news as of today, that he was conscious actually wrote to the doctors, did we win the game? So it seems like we're trending 100% in the right direction, which is awesome. But what a scary sight. As a football fan, I've never seen quite anything like that. It makes you question your love for the game, honestly, when you see things like that. But everything you read about the kid is stand-up act, class act. I could go on and on. I could do a whole podcast about how wonderful he is. You guys, I'm sure, have seen the toy drive and donate to that if you haven't already. Like, go support an amazing cause for an amazing person. But it does seem at this point, I'm happy we're recording it because all week it was a mystery. It seems like he's definitely trending towards the right direction. So continue prayers up for him. Obviously, he's not a full recovery quite yet, but everything is overwhelmingly positive these last few days, or last few hours, really. Just today is where we started to see some really big signs. And just a kudos to the NFL medical staff. Obviously, you can question the 5-minute ruling and all that stuff, what was going on. But when you look at just like how they handle emergency situations, it's always been impressive. But especially, I mean, they probably saved this man's life by the CPR and all that. So, like, you got to tip your hat to everything they did. There's lots of stories about, how well trained and how well directing some of these people out there were. So yeah, absolutely. Thoughts and prayers out there though to Damar. Hopefully he continues moving towards that 2023 recovery. And indeed, Campanelli, never too early. You can check all these rankings out at roastrejournal.com/bigboard. We'll be updating them all offseason. And thanks once again, Kevin Rice, for your super chat and for ordering a shirt. Anybody else that wants to order a shirt, go check out shop.roastrejournal.com with all your season winnings here. Go check out the site and let it burn. Thank you, Michael Fawcett. Great work. Great having you around for so many of the streams, my man. And Kristen, man, you were always here as well. You're welcome for the advice, but thank you for being such a great, consistent fan. Charlie, if you're not way too early, you're way too late. Hell yeah, baby. And I hope you took it down, my man. I want to hear how it all went. Obviously, a lot of ships still up in the air, too. My man Giuseppe winning the ship the same day the baby girl was born. Giants win. What a day. Hell yeah, Giuseppe. Awesome Sunday. I know we saw you at the hospital last time we talked to you. Impressive stuff, my man. Great stuff. Splitting third place in one league. Yeah, it's kind of what you got to do, Tunes. Too bad lost in the ship, man, but it's what happens. I had the classic Tunes, most points during my bye week, dud during my semifinals, outscored every team in the league during the finals. Why? Why does this happen? I hate it. Bulldog, what's going on, man? Came in second with Mixon and Higgins to play, but was down 45 points. Yeah, I mean, maybe they get there. We've seen, each of those guys do 20 to 30 on their own. Mixon had 50 on his own, but, what can you do? I'm glad to hear it came in second. It was a great season. You were awesome, Bulldog fan. So good to see you throughout it. Thank you for all the hell yeah, Dave. Chose to split the pot and conduct a 15-round boxing match to determine the winner. Oh, man, you got to record that match, Campanelli. I've got to see this, man. Let's get the training. Let's get the Rocky video going here. I got to see you throw down in the ring. Hell yeah, let's go. What a way to decide it. Truly deciding. We treat it as a joke. You got to have a fight to the death for the picture, boxing match. And you actually took it. Great to see. Well, thank you again so much. It was awesome to get back and going, trying to be consistent this offseason so I can keep touch with you guys. You guys are all legends. Charlie taking it home. Hell yeah. Let's go, Wolfpack. Thank you guys again so much for being here. On your way out, that thumbs up button would be so greatly appreciated. Comment if you're catching the replay. I'll be checking those comments, replying at all. If you have questions for the offseason, Dynasty, any of that stuff, you can find me at Roto Street Wolf. We got some big stuff planned for 2023, so stick tuned. Hit that sub button if you haven't already, and join that Wolfpack at RotoStreetJournal.com. No Wolf of Fancy Sheep. Be the Wolves, guys. Later.